At the beginning, we see Chuxia standing in tears before her fiancé's grave, who had passed away just 2 days before their wedding. As she weeps, she glances behind her and sees her fiancé standing there, completely soaked, gazing at her longingly. Before she can react, he kisses her, and the shock causes Chuxia to faint. When she wakes up the next day, she believes it was all just a dream. Then her close friend Hyujin enters the room and tells her that she had lost consciousness and had been asleep for 2 whole days. Chuxia is stunned and realizes something is wrong. Hyujin then informs her that he has booked a trip for her lasting several months so she can overcome her grief and change her mood. Time passes, and Chuxia returns from the trip. We see her walking sleepily toward her home. Upon entering, she sits wearily on the couch, only to be surprised that she's sitting on her fiancé's lap, who is startled by her action. Chuxia looks at him in horror, thinking she's hallucinating again. She hugs him, saying that it doesn't matter if she's hallucinating, it's enough to see him once more. At that moment, her stepmother Nianxi enters and tells her to stay away from her younger brother, Lu Bai. Chuxia stands in shock, staring at Lu Bai in disbelief. She then heads to her room and collapses onto the bed, saying that this Lu Bai has her fiancé's voice and even his intense gaze. She feels she must confirm for herself that he isn't who she thinks he is. Chuxia decides to break into Lu Bai's room to search through his personal belongings, hoping to find anything that might link him to her late fiancé. However, she finds nothing that belonged to her former fiancé. Undeterred, she resolves to conduct a DNA test. She repeatedly attempts to collect a hair sample from Lu Bai and eventually succeeds, but Nianxi catches her in the act. In the next scene, Lu Bai is on the phone with someone, expressing his desire for Chuxia's father's company to go bankrupt. He mentions starting with the Alkajak deal. Nianxi enters the office and tells him they need to obtain the details of the deal to present a better offer to the investor. She reveals that she has stolen Chuxia's room keys and asks Lu Bai to sneak into her room. As Chuxia enters the kitchen, the key lies on the table. Before she can reach it, Lu Bai approaches her and asks Nianxi to leave. He then tells Chuxia that he is the same person she saw at her fiancé's funeral several months ago. He accuses her of kissing him when she saw him, although the opposite had occurred. He remarks that she was terrible at kissing and that he wished he could teach her, but now considers himself her uncle since he's her stepmother's brother. Embarrassed, Chuxia leaves the kitchen without noticing the key. In the following scene, Chuxia is sitting in a restaurant when Hyujin presents her with a birthday cake. She is happy that he remembered, as he is the only one who did. Hyujin encourages her to move on from her grief and forget her deceased fiancé. It's evident that Hyujin is in love with her. When Chuxia returns home, she finds Lu Bai standing in front of her, his face etched with anger. He asks where she has been so late. Chuxia haughtily tells him it's none of his business, as he isn't her guardian. Lu Bai responds that, as her stepmother's brother, he considers himself family and has the right to be concerned about her. Chuxia tells him she was celebrating her birthday with Hyujin. Lu Bai decides to take Chuxia to the garden and prepares a dinner to celebrate her birthday as well. He offers her a drink, hoping she'll get drunk so he can sneak into her office and search for documents. However, when Chuxia does get drunk, Lu Bai is surprised by her behavior. She gets closer to him, starts flirting, and tells him he's incredibly handsome, just like her fiancé. She says she can't resist him and begins touching his face, trying to convince herself he's not her late fiancé. Lu Bai grabs her hand and warns her to back off, saying he can't guarantee he'll be able to control himself if she keeps pushing. When Chuxia doesn't stop, Lu Bai leans in to kiss her, but she passes out at the last moment. He carries her to her room, uses the key Nianxi gave him, opens the safe, and takes photos of the deal documents. On his way out, Lu Bai finds Chuxia standing in front of him. He hides the key behind his back. Chuxia asks what he's hiding, and as she moves closer to see, Lu Bai, trying to distract her, tells her he is her fiancé and that he had to fake his death for a reason. At first, she doesn't believe him, but then she bursts into tears, asking why he did this to her. She hugs him in heartbreak. Lu Bai moves in to kiss her but pulls back at the last second, afraid she'll hate him once she knows the full truth. But Chuxia's repeated closeness breaks his restraint. He begins kissing her passionately and lays her down on the bed. However, she passes out again, which oddly brings him some relief. As he tries to leave, she grabs his hand and asks him to stay. Lu Bai sits next to her until she falls asleep, and eventually dozes off too. When Chuxia wakes up in the morning, she screams, shoves Lu Bai away, and blames him for what happened. A little while later, Chuxia approaches Lu Bai, having forgotten everything that happened, including that he told her he was actually her fiancé. She apologizes for her behavior, admitting that when she gets drunk, She completely loses control. She asks him to forget everything that happened. In the next scene, we see Chuxia leaving the company after work. She receives a call from the lab informing her that the DNA test results do not match her late fiancé's. She realizes Lu Bai isn't her fiancé and feels heartbroken, as if she's lost him all over again. A flashback shows her trying on her wedding dress 2 days before the wedding, when she received a message from the police in the foreign country her fiancé had been in, informing her that he had died in a shootout. Overwhelmed by grief, Chuxia heads to a bar and starts drinking heavily, drowning in sorrow as if mourning him for the second time. She then goes to a food truck and begins eating. When she asks the vendor for more, he tells her the last portion was just sold to a guy at the nearby table. She approaches the man and is stunned to find it's Lu Bai, eating. Boldly, she leans in and takes the food right from his mouth, leaving him trembling from her touch. She walks away again, completely drunk. 2 young men spot her and try to harass her. Suddenly, Lu Bai appears, places his earbuds in her ears so she won't hear what's happening, and violently beats the 2 men to protect her. Later, back at home, Lu Bai is taking a shower when he's startled by Nianxi, standing in front of him in her nightgown. She tries to get close to him, but he pushes her away and rejects her, firmly telling her that this was never part of their deal. Nianxi is left feeling both humiliated and angry. Meanwhile, Chuxia is putting on her makeup, determined to dive back into work with passion, move on from her fiancé, and return to who she used to be. As she steps out of her room, she finds Lu Bai standing there. Without thinking, she hugs him from behind. Lu Bai stiffens and asks what she's doing. Chuxia quickly snaps back to reality and tells him she was just saying goodbye before heading to work, an innocent hug, since he's technically her uncle. In the next scene, Chuxia's father is visibly upset after losing his deal with the investor. Nianxi tries to comfort him, though she's secretly delighted. He confides in her that he's been feeling unwell and that he has already transferred all his assets to his daughter in case he dies, to ensure her safety and security. Nianxi rushes to Lu Bai, angry, and tells him what happened. Lu Bai promises to help her get hold of the will and change it in their favor, in exchange for her help getting access to the company. Nianxi manages to sneak him in. While Chuxia finishes a meeting, Lu Bai enters her late fiancé's office and sits in his chair. Chuxia walks in and scolds him. Lu Bai claims he just wanted to see a photo of her fiancé to find out if there really is any resemblance. Chuxia immediately tells him her fiancé was far more handsome in every possible way. Lu Bai, visibly irritated, steps closer and asks, "Is that why you kissed me twice when you were drunk? Because you thought I was him?" Embarrassed, Chuxia admits she always ruins things when she's drunk and not in control, and that it had nothing to do with him. She then says that even if he were the last man on Earth, she'd never fall in love with him. Lu Bai storms out, clearly hurt, while Chuxia sighs in relief. Inside the elevator, Lu Bai looks down at the adhesive strip on his hand, revealing that he managed to lift Chuxia's fingerprint. Lu Bai enters Chuxia's room, opens the safe, and successfully steals the will. He hands it over to Nianxi. In the next scene, we see Chuxia rushing to the hospital after Nianxi informs her that her father suffered a heart attack. Nianxi says she couldn't get him to the hospital herself and claims she's exhausted and needs to leave. Chuxia thanks her for saving her father's life and insists she go rest, saying she'll take care of him. Nianxi returns home and finds Lu Bai there. She begins preparing a romantic dinner for the 2 of them and confesses that she's helping him with everything because she loves him. But Lu Bai doesn't give her the chance. He pulls away from her once again. The following day, Lu Bai visits the hospital to check on Chuxia and finds her asleep. He sits beside her, watching her quietly, then gently drapes his coat over her. As he watches her, he begins to realize that she's innocent and has nothing to do with his vendetta against her father. When Chuxia's assistant enters to wake her so she can sign some documents, Lu Bai stops her, asking her to let Chuxia sleep. At that moment, he decides to protect her from Nianxi. When Chuxia wakes up, she finds a note from Lu Bai asking her to meet him at her fiancé's grave. There, he reassures her not to worry about anything and promises to protect her as much as he can. Soon after, Nianxi discovers that Chuxia's father has regained consciousness and is out of danger. Though she pretends to be happy, she's clearly upset. In the next scene, Chuxia is at the company when her assistant shows her a social media post that received a like from the mysterious but famous fashion designer known as the King. Ever since, their sales have skyrocketed. Chuxia decides to collaborate with him to boost the company even further. She starts sending him messages, but what she doesn't know is that it's actually Lu Bai replying. He is the king. But Lu Bai decides to keep the possibility of collaborating with her vague, for now, just to tease her a little. Chu Xia, however, refuses to give up. The next day, she heads to the neighborhood where the king supposedly lives and asks the gatekeeper to let her in, but he refuses. By coincidence, she runs into Lu Bai, who tells her he lives there. Chu Xia asks him to help her get into the residential complex. Lu Bai agrees and tells the gatekeeper that she's his niece. Once inside, Chu Xia asks Lu Bai if she can stay with him for a while so she can find a way to contact the king and work with him. Lu Bai initially refuses, her presence is too tempting for him, but after much pleading he finally agrees. He brings her inside and warns her that there are rules if she wants to stay. She can only stay for 2 days. But Chu Xia tells him she doesn't follow his rules and she won't leave until she meets the king. A short while later, the doorbell rings, Nianxi walks in and is stunned to see Chu Xia in Lu Bai's apartment. She demands to know what Chu Xia is doing there. Lu Bai explains that she's only there to gather information about the king. Lu Bai and Nianxi sit down to work, and Chu Xia leaves them and heads downstairs. She finds 3 trash bins, one for each building in the complex, and thinks to herself that the king must be a foreigner. He'd probably buy imported products. So she decides to dig through the trash to find clues. Moments later, Lu Bai arrives and sees what she's doing. He quickly pulls her away from the bins and takes her back upstairs. He brings her to the bathroom and washes her hands himself. As he does, Chu Xia looks at him and starts to feel that he's actually a very kind person, very different from what she had thought. When Lu Bai notices the way Chu Xia is looking at him, he asks if she's falling for him. Chu Xia quickly denies it, telling him he's just a flirt and probably acts like this with everyone. But Lu Bai assures her that he only behaves this way with her. Wanting to drop a hint that he's actually the king, Lu Bai steps out onto the balcony and takes a photo of the residential building. When Chu Xia sees the post online, she screams with excitement, convinced that the king must live in the same building, maybe in the apartment next door or right above them. Lu Bai thinks to himself that she's incredibly clueless. Later, Chu Xia invites Hu Jin over. He's completely shocked to see Lu Bai alive, but Chu Xia quickly tells him that this man isn't Lu Bai. He's just Nianxi's brother who happens to look like him. Lu Bai, clearly irritated, can't hide his jealousy, and Hu Jin is visibly jealous too. The tension between the two is obvious. At the end of the evening, Chu Xia walks Hu Jin out herself. He tells her he doesn't feel comfortable with her living under the same roof as Lu Bai and that something about him doesn't sit right. But Chu Xia brushes it off, saying Lu Bai may be a flirt but he's harmless. After Hu Jin leaves, he contacts a friend to dig up information on Nianxi's brother and confirm his identity. Meanwhile, back at the apartment, Lu Bai corners Chu Xia and tells her not to bring any other men into his home again. He won't let anyone else get near her. Chu Xia pushes back, insisting she can invite whoever she wants, and says she'll pay half the rent if it makes things easier. Frustrated, Lu Bai blurts out that he is the king, hoping it will finally drive her out of the apartment. But Chu Xia doesn't believe him. She assumes he just means he's a fan of the king, and says that once she finds the real designer, she'll arrange for Lu Bai to meet him. Lu Bai is left in stunned disbelief, realizing she's completely hopeless. In the next scene, we see Chu Xia with Hu Jin at the office, where he suggests they invite the king to a party so they can meet him and collaborate. Chu Xia tells him that the king never attends parties because he always hides his true identity. However, an idea crosses her mind. What if they host a masquerade ball? That way, the king could attend without revealing his real identity, and he would surely accept the invitation. Later, Chu Xia returns home and starts trying on dresses, one after the other. She asks Lu Bai for his opinion, but Lu Bai tells her that all of them are bad, though each one actually looks amazing on her. It's clear he's jealous. After a while, Chu Xia emerges in a red dress and asks Lu Bai to zip it up. When he approaches her, Chu Xia freezes. Lu Bai notices her distracted gaze and mischievously comments that she's nervous around him because she must definitely like him. Chu Xia denies it and quickly leaves the room. The next scene shows Chu Xia getting ready for the party with Hu Jin, who tells her he made a custom lipstick just for her. Although this is a clear declaration of his feelings for her, Chu Xia doesn't quite understand what he's hinting at. At the party, Chu Xia asks her assistant to let her know if she suspects anyone of being the king, as he will be wearing a mask. Meanwhile, Hu Jin overhears Lu Bai speaking to Nianxi, and to his shock, he discovers that Lu Bai is actually the king that Chu Xia is looking for. Hu Jin is furious and orders all his men to wear masks so that Chu Xia won't figure out Lu Bai's true identity. Chu Xia decides not to give up, so she goes on stage, plays the king's favorite song, and starts dancing, hoping he will come out and join her. Lu Bai comes out and starts dancing with her, telling her that he's the king. While they're dancing, Chu Xia notices that he dances like her fiancé. Tears start to well up in her eyes, and she tells him that she misses her fiancé so much. Lu Bai is moved and tells her to forget the past. He then leaves her, broken. The next day, Lu Bai sees Chu Xia watching a famous actor and admiring his muscles. He feels jealous and asks her why she's looking at other men when he's handsome and has muscles too. Chu Xia mocks him, telling him that the king upset her at the party last night, that she's changed her mind about working with him, and that she'll ask Jin to find another jewelry designer to work with. Lu Bai shows signs of displeasure. He tries to convince her to change her mind, but she insists. Later that evening, he sits alone, trying to find a solution. An idea strikes him. He could open the king's account and wait for Chu Xia to notice. But she doesn't come, so he goes to check on her and finds her collapsed on the floor. Lu Bai rushes to her and takes her to the hospital. The doctor tells him she has hemorrhoids and needs surgery, but someone from her family must sign for it. Chu Xia refuses, but Lu Bai steps in and signs for her. After the surgery, Chu Xia feels very embarrassed, especially when she sees Lu Bai. She starts hitting him because he agreed to it. In an attempt to push her away, Lu Bai accidentally kisses her, and she quickly pulls back. Soon after, the nurse enters and starts flirting with Lu Bai. Chu Xia, feeling jealous, tells her that Lu Bai has been divorced twice. When the nurse leaves, Lu Bai asks Chu Xia if she's jealous, but Chu Xia tells him that she's not jealous at all, she just doesn't want the nurse to keep following him. A little later, Jin arrives to visit her, but he doesn't know about her condition. Chu Xia asks Lu Bai not to tell him anything, and she promises to do whatever he says as long as he keeps it a secret. Lu Bai agrees, but Jin senses that something is being hidden from him, and he feels jealous because Chu Xia trusts Lu Bai. Lu Bai hints to Jin that Chu Xia loves him and that he won't be able to win her love no matter what he does. Jin starts feeling threatened by Lu Bai. The next day, Chu Xia discovers that someone has leaked some designs from the company to a rival company, but she doesn't know who. Her assistant suggests reviewing the security cameras to figure out who did it. However, Chu Xia is too tired and has work to do, so she asks Lu Bai to do it for her. He tells her he's feeling sleepy and won't do it. Chu Xia tries to persuade him by acting sweet, but he refuses because he's tired. She then tells him she'll make him wake up and approaches him as if to kiss him, but instead hits him on the head and tells him to wake up. In retaliation, Lu Bai tries to kiss her for real, but she pulls away. When Lu Bai reviews the cameras, he tells her that some recordings have been deleted, but Chu Xia is unable to recover them. She feels disappointed and tells Lu Bai that she's a failed manager, wishing her fiancé were alive to help with the work and lighten her load like before. Lu Bai is deeply moved and embraces Chu Xia, telling her to consider him her fiancé. Chu Xia breaks down in tears, telling him that she doesn't know how to act. But after a while, she feels better and thanks Lu Bai, telling him that she will do her best to succeed as if her fiancé were still with her. When Lu Bai returns home, he calls the king's persona to the manager of the company that leaked the designs, threatening him that if he doesn't delete them and reveal the spy, he will destroy the company's reputation. Lu Bai soon learns who the spy is and, together with Chu Xia, confronts the employee the next day. She coldly tells them that they won't be able to hurt her because they have no proof. However, just then, Jin walks in with the recovered security camera footage, and the employee loses her composure, begging Chu Xia for forgiveness. But Chu Xia refuses. Lu Bai, at this point, is angry because Chu Xia turned to Jin for help, and he tells her not to rely on anyone else but him if she needs help in the future. While Chu Xia is eating chips, Lu Bai gets closer, taking one of her mouth and kisses her, proving to her that she belongs to him and no one else. In the next scene, we see Nian Shi, who, after receiving a call, finds out that the employee has been caught but didn't say anything about her involvement. We learn that Nian Shi was behind the plot to cause trouble for Chu Xia and get her removed from her position as CEO. Later, Chu Xia and Lu Bai visit one of the famous designers and ask him to collaborate with their company. He refuses and kicks them out of his house, but before closing the door on them, Lu Bai's hand gets caught, and he injures himself. The designer feels guilty and allows them to come in. Chu Xia takes advantage of the situation, asking how he could let them leave with Lu Bai injured, especially since the place is so far away. The designer offers for them to stay at his house for the night, and Chu Xia is happy to have another chance to try convincing him. Later, Chu Xia is sitting in the front yard, and Lu Bai joins her. She thanks him for everything he did for her today, and Lu Bai responds gently, making Chu Xia feel a bit uneasy. She decides to go inside and sleep to avoid facing her emotions. However, Lu Bai and Chu Xia end up arguing over who will sleep on the bed, and in the end, they both fall asleep next to each other from exhaustion. The next morning, when Lu Bai wakes up and sees her beside him, he kisses her forehead gently. When he senses she's about to wake up, he pretends to still be asleep. Chu-xia, waking up, feels embarrassed about what happened and hides under the blanket. In the next scene, we see Chu-xia desperately trying every possible way to convince the designer to work with them, but he refuses. However, she discovers that Hugh-jin has a connection with the designer, so she sends for him to try to convince him. Hugh-jin tells her that they can't stay there alone and invites her to come to his hotel, which she agrees to immediately. Lu Bai feels very upset and decides to go with them. Once they're at the hotel, Chu-xia starts eating and drinking, but Lu Bai is worried she might get drunk and do with Hugh-jin what she does with him when she's intoxicated. He tries to stop her from drinking, but at night, they all sit together, and Chu-xia drinks despite Lu Bai's efforts to prevent her. Hugh-jin, to provoke Lu Bai, mentions that one time, Chu-xia got drunk and ended up in his room. Before he can continue, Chu-xia stops him, telling him there's no need to air such embarrassing details. Lu Bai feels a surge of jealousy and wants to know what happened, so he drinks as well. When Chu-xia goes to her room, Lu Bai confronts her angrily, asking about what happened between her and Hugh-jin. She tells him that it's none of his business, but he insists that she belongs to him and no one else, not allowing her to get close to anyone but him. Chu-xia weakens in front of him, and he struggles with his own feelings as well. They spend the night together. The next morning, Chu-xia wakes up, shocked by what happened. She tells him to forget everything and consider it a mistake because they were both drunk and weren't thinking clearly. As she hears Hugh-jin approaching the room, she quickly asks Lu Bai to hide and not come out. But as soon as she opens the door, Lu Bai steps out behind her to provoke Hugh-jin. Hugh-jin is confused, and Chu-xia tries to cover the situation by telling him that the shower in his room is broken, so Lu Bai came over to take one at hers. However, Hugh-jin sees Chu-xia's lipstick mark on Lu Bai's neck and understands what happened. After this, Lu Bai keeps talking to the designer, repeatedly trying to convince him to work with Chu-xia. Finally, after admitting to the designer that he is the king, the designer agrees. Chu-xia is shocked and asks him to cooperate with her as she originally wanted. But he tells her that he's no longer convinced, and that she had previously said she didn't want to work with the king. If she truly wants him to collaborate with her, she'll need to convince him every day and do whatever it takes to please him. When they return to Lu Bai's house, Chu-xia stays with him. When she sees him making breakfast, she insists on making it herself. However, before they can eat, Hugh-jin shows up, informing them that he rented the apartment next door so he could stay close to them. Lu Bai sarcastically says that he wishes he had invited him to breakfast, but it seems Hugh-jin wasn't considered. Hugh-jin leaves the apartment. Out of jealousy, Lu Bai injures his finger. Chu-xia rushes to get him a bandage, but when she enters the room, she sees a particular box. Before she can open it, Lu Bai quickly approaches and tells her that he's agreed to collaborate. Chu-xia feels happy and forgets about the box. We then discover that the box contains a gift Chu-xia had given to Lu Bai before, and he didn't want her to see it and realize that he is indeed her fiancé. Lu Bai reflects on the day he was attacked and severely injured. However, Nianxi, his first love from high school before she had to marry Chu-xia's father, managed to save him. She tells him that Chu-xia's father was behind the attack to prevent Lu Bai from taking control of his companies. She had hoped Lu Bai would leave Chu-xia and be with her instead. But Lu Bai decides to fake his death and return under the guise of her brother to find out what really happened. He had always tried to hide his feelings for Chu-xia while also protecting and caring for her. During the funeral, he couldn't bear seeing her so upset, but he managed to keep everything a secret. Later, after Lu Bai wakes up, he goes to Chu-xia's room, covers her with the blanket, and gently pats her head with love before leaving. However, we learn that Chu-xia was awake the whole time. The next day, Lu Bai kidnaps the man who sent the attackers after him and begins his attempts to find out who is behind it. He then goes to the company and steals the last project Chu-xia was working on. When Chu-xia enters her office, Lu Bai distracts her by tearing up her photo, telling her that her fiancé is the past and he is the present and the future. Chu-xia, furious, screams at him that she never wants to see him again. Chu-xia goes to Hugh-jin's house to calm down, wondering how she has feelings for Lu Bai despite not being able to forget her fiancé. Meanwhile, Lu Bai successfully steals the project, though he feels guilty for what he's done. In the evening, Hugh-jin invites Chu-xia to dinner to comfort her, and she goes to the bathroom. Lu Bai calls, but Hugh-jin hangs up to prevent Chu-xia from hearing it. Soon after, Hugh-jin offers her a drink, and she drinks until she's completely drunk. She starts talking nonsense, and when she eventually falls asleep on the couch, Hugh-jin moves closer, trying to take advantage of the situation. At that moment, Lu Bai arrives and punches Hugh-jin. Chu-xia wakes up, and Hugh-jin deceives her, saying he was just helping her sleep. Lu Bai, however, tells her the truth, that Hyujin was trying to take advantage of her, but Chu Xia doesn't believe him. Lu Bai then drags her back to their place against her will. At home, Lu Bai, filled with jealousy, asks Chu Xia if she still loves her fiancé. Chu Xia admits that she does. Lu Bai gives her a photo of her fiancé as a replacement for the one he tore up, but tells her that her fiancé is just a thing of the past and that he is her future. He insists she forget about her fiancé, but Chu Xia begins to feel unwell and quickly steps away from him. Lu Bai tells her that from now on, she's not allowed to drink and that she cannot return home after 10 p.m. That night, Lu Bai has a nightmare where Hyujin tries to hurt Chu Xia, and he wakes up in a panic. When he checks on Chu Xia, he sees she's fine, but he starts thinking about how to protect her from Hyujin. Meanwhile, Chu Xia, who believes everything is a misunderstanding, decides to go to Hyujin's house. The next day, everything goes smoothly. While Chu Xia is drinking her coffee, some spills on her, and Hyujin offers her one of his designs to wear. She tries it on, and Hyujin is so taken by her beauty that he doesn't respond when she speaks to him. She receives a call from Lu Bai, asking her to come home, but when he sees her in the dress, he feels jealous because she changed outside their home. Lu Bai then gives her pepper spray and a taser to protect herself. Later, while they're having dinner, Chu Xia gets lost in Hyujin's handsome features. She admits that she's become a bit confused because of him recently, and she can't forget her fiancé so easily. That night, as Lu Bai falls asleep, Chu Xia gets closer to him, studying his features. Before she can kiss him, she quickly pulls away. But Lu Bai opens his eyes, pulls her closer, and asks if she has feelings for him. Chu Xia tries to hide it and runs to her room, burying herself in work. While she's working, Lu Bai sends her a message saying he's at a nearby shopping mall. Not long after, Chu Xia sees news of a massive fire at that mall. She panics and rushes to the location, screaming hysterically as she tries to enter and look for Lu Bai. The security forces stop her, but she soon hears Lu Bai's voice behind her. She runs to him, telling him she almost died from fear for him. Unable to control himself any longer, Lu Bai confesses his love for her, and she does the same. Meanwhile, Nianxi and Hyujin are watching the scene and both feel jealousy and anger. We realize that Hyujin found out where Chu Xia was through a tracking device he planted in their home. That evening, as they listen to Lu Bai and Chu Xia's conversation, Hyujin becomes furious and quickly heads to their house. Just before Chu Xia opens the door, Lu Bai stops her and carries her to their private room. The next day, Chu Xia and Lu Bai wake up, happy about what happened the night before. When she goes to work, Hyujin tells her that there is a delay in a shipment of jewelry being sent to his company. Chu Xia apologizes, and Hyujin asks her to go to the warehouse to check if the shipment has left the company. This is a trap set by Hyujin, who plans to lock Chu Xia in the warehouse, knowing that Lu Bai wouldn't be able to help. When the lights go out, Chu Xia hears a sound and thinks it's a ghost, but then realizes it's a mouse, which makes her even more terrified. As she screams, Hyujin watches her on the security cameras, waiting for the right moment to go to her. But Lu Bai beats him to it, opening the door and quickly rescuing Chu Xia. Soon after, Hyujin calls her, pretending that he just found out what happened and checks if she's okay. Chu Xia tells him that she's actually dating Lu Bai, which makes Hyujin even angrier. That evening, Chu Xia gets romantically closer to Lu Bai, thanking him for what he did for her the previous night and confessing that she loves him. In the next scene, we see Lu Bai talking to Nianxi, telling her that he knows she's the one who delayed Hyujin's shipment. He warns her not to do anything that could put Chu Xia in danger again, or he'll cause problems for her. But the next day, Nianxi sends a reporter to photograph Lu Bai carrying Chu Xia on his back and posts the pictures on social media. This causes people to attack Chu Xia, accusing her of being dishonest because she's in a relationship so soon after her fiancé's death, as if she never loved him. People also demand that King break the contract with her company. When Chu Xia sees this, she decides to postpone the launch of her new jewelry collection for a while. When Lu Bai arrives, Chu Xia embraces him and tells him that she doesn't care about what's happening and that she will be able to overcome this. She decides to go to a press conference in front of everyone to try to justify her position. However, the crowd attacks her, throwing bottles, and Lu Bai protects her with his body. He then announces to the crowd that he is the person in the photo, revealing that he is not only the king but also her late fiancé. He explains that he faked his death because someone had tried to attack him, and he needed to reveal his true identity. Chu Xia, however, thinks he is just saying this to protect her. Lu Bai then takes her to a restaurant and reiterates that he truly is her fiancé. Chu Xia is stunned, and before she can speak, Nianxi arrives and asks to speak with Lu Bai privately. Chu Xia leaves in shock, and Nianxi reproaches Lu Bai for returning to Chuxia despite everything her father did. Lu Bai responds that her father's actions have nothing to do with him, and he will punish him legally. He warns Nianxi to stay away from him because he will never love her, and if she harms Chuxia, it won't end well for her. When Lu Bai returns home, he finds Chuxia in an emotional breakdown. She accuses him of deceiving her and acting like nothing had happened while she thought he was dead. She tells him that she never wants to see him again and leaves with Jin, who plays a certain song for her. However, she tells him that she doesn't like it, and Jin's anger shows in his eyes, but he quickly controls himself before Chuxia notices. Later, Chuxia goes to Nianxi and asks why she had told her that Lu Bai was her brother. Nianxi explains that Lu Bai is her childhood friend and first love, and that he asked her to say that, and she couldn't refuse. She then lies to Chuxia, saying he did it because he didn't trust her and that he would never have told her the truth. When Chuxia asks about the DNA test, Nianxi tells her that she was the one who forged it. The next day, reporters are waiting for Chuxia outside the company and start asking her about the date of her wedding to Lu Bai. When she gets nervous, Lu Bai himself appears and tells the reporters that it will be soon. As they enter the company, the employees celebrate their arrival. Lu Bai tries to reconcile with Chuxia, but he fails every time. On her way home, she is attacked by some thugs hired by Nianxi, but Lu Bai quickly defends her. Chuxia takes him home and starts taking care of his wound. Lu Bai keeps staring at her with love, and she tells him that this won't work on her. He decides to get closer and kiss her, but it only makes things worse. Chuxia gets up to leave, but he grabs her and tells her he's injured and can't do anything. She decides to stay the night with him. While Chuxia is eating bread, Lu Bai approaches and apologizes to her again, eating the bread with his mouth until he kisses her. Chuxia surrenders to spending the night with him, but the next day, she tells him that what happened doesn't matter because she was weak, but she still hasn't forgiven him. The next day, Lu Bai discovers that Chuxia's father didn't know she was his biological daughter until the test results came out after Lu Bai's accident. This is because she got lost from her family when she was young. Lu Bai believes that her father's motive to kill him, thinking it was for the sake of the shares, was incorrect. He decides to give up his shares to Chuxia. When she asks why, Lu Bai tells her he can't reveal why he faked his death, but he was protecting both himself and her. He was always around, trying to defend her, and now Chuxia decides to forgive him. In the next scene, we see Jin hitting Nianxi after discovering that she sent men to attack Chuxia. He warns her that if she ever tries to harm her again, he will kill her. We then find out that Jin and Nianxi were the ones who conspired to get rid of Lu Bai because Jin loves Chuxia. However, Nianxi was deceiving him, and she was the one who saved Lu Bai at the last moment because she loves him. She thought that if she lost Chuxia, Lu Bai would love her. Soon after, Lu Bai receives a call and a message from Nianxi telling him to come to her. When he arrives, he finds her surrounded by a lot of blood. The next day, Chuxia calls him, but he tells her he has an emergency meeting and left. However, Jin goes to her and tells her that Lu Bai is lying and that he ran away because he's accused of killing Nianxi. Because of this, the company's shares plummet drastically. Jin tries to manipulate Chuxia, telling her that Lu Bai has abandoned her for the second time and that he's returned to destroy her father's company. He offers to save her if she marries him, and she tells him she'll think about it. When she returns home, Chuxia finds out that her father's health will worsen again because of everything that's happened. She reassures him that everything will be fine and then goes to her room, devastated and crying. She calls Jin and tells him that she's agreed to marry him. The next day, Jin takes her shopping and forces her to change her hairstyle. When he tries to kiss her, Chuxia pulls away and asks for some time. He suggests that she live in his house so she can get used to his presence. When they get there, Jin makes her dinner, but it's awful, so she orders food from outside. Jin, however, answers the delivery, telling her that it's either his food or nothing, and Chuxia has no choice but to go to bed hungry. The next day, she finds a message from him saying that he's made her food, but it's even worse. Just as she's about to leave, the doorbell rings, and Chuxia is shocked to see Lu Bai. He tells her that he's innocent and that he will prove it soon, asking her to just trust him. Chuxia cries, but Lu Bai kisses her, and at that moment, Jin arrives, sensing something strange. Chuxia opens the door and tries to push Jin away, taking him outside so Lu Bai can escape. She suggests that they watch a movie, but Jin says he wants to watch a horror film. After ensuring Lu Bai has fled, Chuxia tells Jin that she's tired and wants to sleep. On the other side, Lu Bai discovers from one of his men that before Chuxia returned to her family, she had a twin sister who had died before Chuxia is found. The twin sister was engaged to Jin, who loved her madly. When Chuxia returned, Hyujin started treating her as if she were her twin and tried to make her fall in love with him. The next morning, Chuxia wakes up to find videos of her twin sister with Hyujin, and she's made to have the same hairstyle that Hyujin had her wear. The twin also has a scar on her back, which makes Chuxia remember the scar she had gotten a while ago. She realizes that Hyujin must have caused it when she was drunk. A few moments later, Chuxia finds Hyujin behind her. He grabs her and talks crazily, saying that he suffered so much to make her a copy of her sister and that he will never lose her again. The scene transitions to Hyujin and Chuxia's wedding. While Hyujin is happy, Chuxia is terrified. Suddenly, Lu Bai and Yanxi burst into the scene. We find out that Lu Bai saved her from death. However, Chuxia screams at Lu Bai not to come closer because Hyujin has tied a bomb to her hand, and everyone starts running. Lu Bai tells Hyujin that if Chuxia's sister were alive, she wouldn't be happy with what he's doing. But Hyujin acts completely insane and asks Lu Bai to kill him as he had originally wanted and leave Chuxia alone. Hyujin throws a knife at Lu Bai to force him to do it, but Lu Bai deflects the knife onto a pillar, causing it to fall. Lu Bai attacks Hyujin and manages to take the control device, deactivating the bomb, but Hyujin stabs Lu Bai, and he falls. The police arrive after Yanxi calls them. Later, we see Yanxi apologizing to Chuxia for everything. She tells her that she never intended to kill Lu Bai and that she did everything because she loved him. When Chuxia's father hears this, he signs the divorce papers for Yanxi but writes her the name of a small hotel in her name, so she can live the life she always wanted. Chuxia returns home to find Lu Bai standing before her, fully recovered. She hugs him tightly, thanking him for everything he did for her and apologizing for what happened, acknowledging that it was all because of her. In the end, Chuxia launches her new jewelry collection, just as she had always dreamed, and it achieves remarkable success, just as she imagined. Later, Lu Bai presents her with an engagement ring and proposes, so they can live a beautiful life together. That was the end of the recap. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to receive all the other recaps.